Nice of the princess to invite us over to the indie showcase, eh, Luigi? I hope they have lots of good games. Luigi, look! It's from Bowser. Dear pesky plumbers, I write this letter to inform you that neither KSB 1 or 2 are coming to the Switch, but that doesn't mean I don't have my surprises. Nintendo's Indie Showcase, Indie World, was yesterday. They announced a lot of cool indie games coming to the Switch, and some of these are absolutely earth-shatteringly amazing. Great, now that I've got your attention, let's start looking at some cool indie games coming to Nintendo Switch. But before we start,
Kirk, you're a disembodied voice. Whoa, so am I.
Go approve this intro. Now I know intros for gaming announcement events aren't exactly the most important thing in the world, but still, this half-hearted attempt at making a self-aware joke is not funny at all. But let's move on to the games now. First off, we have Risk of Rain 2, a third-person shooter with dinosaurs and cool space stuff. It's kinda weird that the first Risk of Rain was a platformer and the second one is a third-person shooter, but I guess that's how they want to move the series forward, kinda like Metroid Prime. Then we have Eastward, an RPG with some really good looking art. And keep that whole good art thing in mind because we're gonna see some really good graphics on some other games later. Here comes Freedom Finger, a shooter with the main focus being on the music and the cartoonish looking graphics. Here comes Roki, or Roki. I don't know. The environments look cool, but in adventure games, you need things to do. This seems to be some kind of walking simulator, if that's the right term. It seems to be mainly a plot-driven game, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have Torchlight 2. It's like Torchlight 1, but with multiplayer. Surprise, surprise, a spiritual successor to Tony Hawk's Skater XL. It's coming to the Switch now. My only complaint from this is that the graphics look like a mobile game. Europa is getting a port on the Switch. It's a pretty interesting platformer with the whole breaking apart thing. It has a little bit of story focus. I think this is a good port. But now it's time for the big guns. Superhot is coming to Switch. This completely surprised me when I saw it. I never got to experience the original Superhot due to the fact that my computer is a potato, so I'm excited to see it on Switch and hoping that it does indeed work well. Dungeon Defenders Awakened, indeed. The series came back after a hiatus. Remember when I told you to keep good art in mind? Well, it was because I wanted to show you The Tourist. This game looks absolutely astonishing with this shaded 3D pixel art aesthetic it's going for. Skellboy is an adventure game with an amazing soundtrack. The aesthetic looks interesting too. Earth Knight seems to have a really interesting premise. Humans have escaped into orbit of Earth after dragons take over the surface. It's apparently procedurally generated, which is pretty interesting for a 2D platformer. Here comes another big announcement. The Hotline Miami collection is coming to Switch. Well, I personally hate these super difficult 2D shooters. I know a lot of people do like them, so I guess this is good for them. Then a reel of other games coming to Switch was shown, so that was pretty interesting, but the one that really caught my attention was the Hipster dog racing simulator. And finally, no Nintendo event would be completed without the One Last Thing game, and that game was Ori. I don't think there was much to say. When I saw those first few frames from the game, I was completely shocked. All I can say is I hope the second one makes it to Switch as well. I hope you enjoyed that little rundown on the Indie World Showcase by Nintendo. But there is one more game I would like to talk about, since I guess it is kind of considered an indie game. Kerbal Space Program 2. Oh my gosh. They're adding multiplayer, colonies, interstellar travel, enhancements to the solar system, and they're releasing in spring 2020. That is my most anticipated game, but since they don't really plan to port it to Mac or Linux at the moment, I think a Switch port is a little bit shaky. Anyway, bye.